The rain hammered the tall windows of Fairfax Hall like it wanted in, like it knew what was coming. I stood alone in the library, the only room still lit by a single lamp. The air smelled of old leather and beeswax and grief. Father's coffin had been carried out hours ago, but the house still echoed with his absence. Or maybe that was just me. They gathered around the long oak table, mother, stepmother, really Lady Margaret Fairfax, her black veil pinned like a crown of shadows. Victor beside her, my half-brother 29, and already wearing father's signet ring. The rest of the family, distant cousins, mostly hovered like moths drawn to the flame of bad news. Victor cleared his throat. His voice came out smooth, practiced. Father left clear instructions. The will was changed last month. Everything, the estate, the London house, the Yorkshire lands, the trusts passes to me, as the son who stayed, as the one who deserved it. He unfolded the paper. The parchment crackled louder than the fire dying in the grate. I didn't move. My fingers were numb around the stem of the wine glass I hadn't touched. Lady Margaret's eyes flicked to me, not with pity, with something colder. Triumph, maybe? Or relief? Eleanor, she said softly, the way people say a name when they're already burying it. Your father loved you, but he knew you'd never settle. Too independent, too headstrong. He wanted stability for Fairfax Hall. Victor will provide that. Victor looked at me then. Really looked. There was no apology in his eyes. Only the quiet certainty of a man who'd already won. The carriage is waiting, he said. One valley, that's all you're allowed. The rest stays here. It was never yours. I felt the words land like stones in deep water. Ripples, not waves. Not yet. I set the glass down. The clink was the only sound for a long moment. You're throwing me out, I said. My voice didn't shake. Not yet. Tonight. On the night we buried him, Lady Margaret tilted her head. It's what he wanted. I looked at the will in Victor's hand. The handwriting was father's sharp, slanted familiar. But something was wrong. The loops on the capital letters were too perfect. Father's hand had trembled in the last year. This one didn't. I didn't say it. Not then. Instead, I turned, walked past them, past the portraits of dead Fairfax men staring down with their cold, certain eyes. Up the stairs to my room. The door closed behind me with a soft, final click. I packed in silence. One valley, 2 dresses. The silver locket mother, my real mother, had worn the day she died. A book of poems father used to read to me when I was small. That was all. When I came down, the hall was empty except for Victor. He stood at the foot of the stairs, arms folded. You'll be fine, Ellie, he said, almost gently. You always said you didn't need this place. I met his eyes. I never said I didn't need my family. He looked away first. The carriage waited in the rain. The driver didn't meet my gaze. I climbed in the door, shut, and Fairfax Hall shrank behind me, its windows glowing like the last embers of a fire someone else had put out. I didn't cry then. I cried later. Much later. The journey north took 2 days. I changed coaches twice, ate nothing, slept in fits against the rattling window. Yorkshire opened around me like a bruise, gray hills, low sky wind that carried the smell of peat and salt. I'd been here once as a child. Father had brought me to see the moors. He'd said, this land remembers Ellie. It never forgets. I wondered if it remembered me. Beatrice Langford. Bea waited at the edge of the village. She was smaller than I remembered, her gray hair tucked under a plain bonnet, but her eyes were the same. Steady. Kind in the way that hurts because it's honest. She didn't ask questions, just took my valley and led me down a narrow lane to a stone cottage half covered in ivy. Inside smelled of wood smoke and bread. "You're home now," she said simply. I sank into the chair by the fire. My bones ached like they'd been carrying something heavier than a volley. "B, did Father ever say anything about me, about any of this?" She hesitated. Poured tea into chipped cups. "He loved you fierce," she said at last. More than he ever said aloud. But he was tired, Ellie. Tired of fighting them. Victor, Margaret, the people who'd circled him like wolves the last years of his life. I stared into the flames. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe I really wasn't enough. B set the kettle down harder than necessary. "Don't you dare believe that." Not for 1 second. Her voice cracked just once. Then she straightened. "He kept a box in the attic here. Things he didn't want them to find. I never looked. But maybe there's something." I nodded. Too tired to argue. Too afraid to hope. That night, I lay on the narrow bed, listening to the wind claw at the shutters. Sleep wouldn't come. Instead came memory's father's laugh when I beat him at chess, the way he'd tuck my hair behind my ear and whisper, "You're my wild one, Ellie. Don't ever let them tame you." I pressed the heels of my hands to my eyes. The next morning, a boy from the village knocked, barely 12, shy. He handed me an envelope, plain no seal, my name in careful black ink. I broke the wax. One line inside. "The true will lies where only someone who truly loved him would look." No signature. My heart slammed once. Hard. I looked up at the gray sky, then back at the cottage. B was watching me from the doorway. "B," I said, voice low, "where did Father spend the most time when he came here alone?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes searched mine. "The old chapel ruin," she said finally, "up on the ridge. He used to sit there for hours. Said it was the only place the silence didn't hurt." I folded the letter, tucked it into my pocket. The wind picked up again. Cold, sharp. But for the first time since the library, something inside me didn't feel broken. It felt awake. And it was listening. The envelope felt heavier than it should. One thin sheet of paper, yet it carried the weight of everything I'd lost. I walked the ridge path alone that afternoon. The wind off the moors pushed against me, sharp and steady, like it wanted to turn me back. I didn't let it. The chapel ruin sat at the top 3 stone walls, left standing roof, long gone ivy, claiming what the weather hadn't. Father used to bring me here when I was small. We'd sit on the broken altar stone and he'd tell stories about knights who kept their word even when the world laughed. I hadn't been back in years. I stepped inside the shell of it. The floor was uneven, moss soft under my boots. No bird sang, just wind moving through the gaps. I searched slowly, under the altar, behind loose stones, along the low wall where Father sometimes leaned his shoulder. Nothing. Only silence and the smell of wet earth. Then I saw it carved low on the inner face of the east wall, half hidden by ivy. A small cross no bigger than my thumb, and below it, faint letters, EF, for Eleanor Fairfax. My initials. His hand. I knelt, ran my fingers over the carving. The stone was cold, but something inside me warmed just a little. He'd left a mark. He'd remembered me here. I sat back on my heels, breathing hard. The letter had said where only someone who truly loved him would look. He'd loved me enough to leave this clue, and someone else had known to send the note. I returned to the cottage as dusk bled across the hills. B was at the stove stirring something that smelled like comfort I didn't deserve. "Find anything?" she asked without turning. "The carving, my initials, nothing else." She nodded once. He came here alone the last time. Sat for hours. I thought he was praying. Maybe he was. I didn't sleep well again. The next morning, I borrowed Bee's old pony and rode into the nearest town, Haworth Cross. Small gray, huddled against the wind. Jack Harlan's office was above the baker's shop. A narrow staircase peeling paint on the door. The brass plate read, Harlan and Sons Solicitors. But there was only one son left. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Jack looked older than the boy I remembered. Taller, thinner lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at 16. His coat was patched at the elbows. He stared at me like he wasn't sure I was real. Ellie, Jack. He stepped aside. The office was small, one desk, 2 chairs, shelves of law books that looked like they hadn't been touched in months. A single window let in weak light. He closed the door. I heard about your father. I'm sorry. I sat without being asked. My hands were shaking. I clasped them in my lap. I need your help. He leaned against the desk, crossed his arms. I'm not sure I can give it. You were father's solicitor once, until Victor had you dismissed for asking too many questions about the estate accounts. His voice was quiet, careful. I was young, stupid. Thought truth mattered more than position. It still does. He looked away. I have a practice here now. Small, steady. If I touch anything Fairfax, they'll bury me. Again, I reached into my pocket. Pulled out the anonymous letter. Laid it on the desk between us. Read it. He did. His brow furrowed. Someone knows, he said softly. Yes. And they're afraid to say it aloud. Jack studied me then. Really studied me. The way he used to when we were children, and I'd fallen from the apple tree checking for broken bones before he laughed. You look tired, Ellie. I am. He exhaled. Long, slow. Tell me what happened. All of it. So I did. The library that night. The will read in Father's voice, but not his hand. Victor's cold certainty. Margaret's quiet triumph. The carriage in the rain. The valise. The way they'd looked at me like I was already gone. I told him about the rumors Margaret had spread years ago, whispers that I was wild, unmarriageable, not quite a lady. How they'd kept suitors away until no one asked anymore. How I'd learned to pretend it didn't matter. When I finished, the room was quiet, except for the tick of the clock on the wall. Jack rubbed his jaw. I always thought Victor was weak. Not cruel, just weak. He's both now. Jack picked up the letter again. Turned it over. No postmark. Delivered by hand. Someone close. I nodded. He set it down. I can't promise anything, but I'll look at the copy you have. Quietly. No letters. No meetings in London. If there's forgery, there'll be signs. Paper. Ink. Pressure of the pen. Relief hit me like a wave I hadn't expected. My eyes stung. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He gave a small, crooked smile. The first real one I'd seen since I walked in. I might regret this. I stood. I already do. For waiting so long to find you again. He walked me to the door, paused. Ellie, if this goes wrong, they'll come for both of us. I know. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Then we'd better not let it go wrong. I stepped out onto the landing. The stairs creaked under my weight. Halfway down, I heard him call softly. Wait, I turned. There's someone you should see, he said. She's been writing to me. Scared. But she won't stop asking about you. My heart stuttered. Sophie, Jack nodded. Your sister? She's coming tomorrow. Alone. She says she needs to tell you something face to face. I gripped the banister. Sophie. 19 now. The little girl who used to hide behind my skirts when Margaret shouted. The one I'd promised to protect. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. Jack watched my face. She's terrified, Ellie. But she's coming anyway. I swallowed. Tell her I'll be here. He closed the door gently. I walked back to the pony. The wind had dropped. The sky was clearing pale and cold. For the first time in weeks, the ache in my chest felt different. Not smaller. Just shared. The train rattled into London at dusk. I kept my head down under the borrowed bonnet, the coarse wool scratching my neck like a warning. I'd left Yorkshire 2 days earlier. Told B I was going to buy thread. Told Jack I needed time to think. Neither believed me, but neither tried to stop me. Sophie's letter had arrived the morning after our last meeting, short, urgent, written in her careful schoolgirl hand. Come home. Please, before it's too late. I'd burned the note in the cottage hearth. Then I'd packed the simplest dress I owned, darkened my hair with walnut stain, and taken the slow coach south. No one looks twice at a servant girl traveling alone. Fairfax Hall loomed at the end of the carriage drive gaslights, flickering behind the tall windows, like eyes that hadn't slept. Rain tapped steadily on the glass roof of the conservatory as I slipped through the garden gate, the one the gardeners never locked, because no one ever tried it. Inside the house smelled the same. Beeswax, damp stone, the faint ghost of father's pipe tobacco. I moved through the servants' corridors, head-bowed apron tied tight. No one questioned me. Why would they? I looked like one of them now. I found B in the still room measuring lavender into muslin bags. She froze when she saw me. The spoon clattered against the porcelain bowl. Ellie, she whispered. God help us. She pulled me into the narrow pantry, closed the door. The air was thick with dried herbs and fear. You shouldn't be here, she said. They'll call the watch. I need to know I told her everything. B looked at me a long moment. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She'd aged 10 years since the funeral. Your father wrote the true will 5 years ago, she began, voice barely above a breath, after Victor lost 3,000 guineas at White's in one night. Your father knew. He knew the boy would ruin us all if the estate passed to him. So he wrote it in secret. Everything to you. The house, the lands, the money. Because you were the only one he trusted to keep it whole. My chest tightened. Then why Lady Margaret found the draft. She confronted him in this very room. He was already ill, his heart failing day by day. She told him if he didn't sign the new one, she'd make sure Victor was cut off entirely. No allowance, no future. She said she'd ruin Sophie's prospects too. Your father. He was weak by then, Ellie. Broken. He signed the forgery to protect what was left of the family. But he never forgave himself. I leaned against the shelves. The jars rattled softly. He chose me, I said. The words tasted like ash. And then he let them take it away. B reached out. Her hand trembled on my arm. He thought he was saving you from having to fight them alone. He was wrong. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back. Not here. Not yet. B lowered her voice even more. The true document still exists. He hid it. I saw him do it late one night after she'd gone to bed. He took it upstairs to the portrait gallery. I straightened. Show me. We waited until the house quieted. Midnight. Rain louder now, drumming on the glass like impatient fingers. We moved through the dark corridors, candles shielded by cupped hands. Shadows stretched long and thin across the marble floors. The portrait gallery was on the second floor. Father's painting hung at the far end, full-length, severe black coat eyes that followed you no matter where you stood. B lifted the frame carefully. Behind it, a small panel in the wainscoting. She pressed. It clicked open. Inside lay a folded sheet of paper, thick vellum, sealed with Father's old crest, the one he'd stopped using after Mother died. I broke the wax with shaking fingers. The handwriting was his, trembling but unmistakable. I, Reginald Fairfax, do hereby bequeath all my worldly goods, estates, and trusts to my beloved daughter Eleanor, to be held in her sole discretion. There were 2 witness signatures. One was B's small precise. The other, Jack Harlan Sr., Jack's father, the man who'd been Father's closest friend until the day he died, the man whose son had just risked everything to help me. I folded the paper, pressed it to my chest. Something inside me cracked open wide and raw. B touched my shoulder. He wanted you to have it, even if he couldn't say it. I couldn't speak. The tears came then, silent at first, then harder. I slid down the wall until I sat on the cold floor. Rain hammered the roof above us. B knelt beside me. She didn't try to hush me. She just stayed. I cried for the father who'd loved me enough to choose me and not enough to fight for me. For the years I'd spent believing I wasn't wanted. For the girl who'd learned to stand alone because no one else would stand with her. When the sobs eased, I wiped my face with my sleeve. I'm not alone anymore, I whispered. B nodded. No, child, you're not. Footsteps echoed in the corridor beyond the gallery doors. Heavy, deliberate. Victor. He pushed the doors open, candle in hand, dressing gown loose over his shoulders. His face went slack when he saw me. Eleanor. I stood slowly. The will was still clutched in my fist. You, he said, voice rising. You're trespassing, stealing. I'll have you arrested. I'll ruin you. I met his eyes. No fear now. Only clarity. You already tried that, I said quietly. He stepped forward. Give me the paper. I didn't move. Behind him, a smaller shadow appeared in the doorway. Sophie. Pale, eyes wide. In her hand, a small brass key. She slipped past Victor before he could stop her. Pressed the key into my palm. The safe, she whispered. In Father's study. It opens the compartment under the desk. There's more. Victor lunged. I stepped back. Sophie stood between us. Enough, she said. Her voice shook, but it held. You've done enough. Victor stared at her, then at me, then at the will in my hand. Rain lashed the windows. Thunder rolled low and distant. I looked at Sophie, at B, at the portrait of the man who'd loved us all and failed us in different ways. We had proof now, real proof, witnessed, hidden, true. But Lady Margaret still ruled this house, and she would burn it all down before she let us take it back. I slipped the will inside my bodice, felt its edges press against my skin. We need to get out, I said softly. Sophie nodded. Victor didn't move. He just watched us. For the first time, he looked small. The corridor stretched dark ahead of us, rain falling harder. But we weren't running anymore. We were walking toward something. The ballroom of Harlan Brooks' Mayfair townhouse glittered like a chandelier had shattered and reformed into light. Crystal caught every candle flame, every jewel, every nervous glance. Music floated above the murmur of silk and whispers, strings soft and sure, as if the orchestra knew something the guests did not. I stood at the edge of the crowd, no longer hidden in servant's gray. The gown I wore was simple midnight blue, cut low enough to show the silver locket at my throat, the one my mother had worn until the day she died. I'd taken it from the valise the night they sent me away. Tonight it felt heavier than gold. A reminder, a promise. Jack waited near the terrace doors, formal black coat, button, tight eyes, scanning the room like a man who'd learned to expect knives in the dark. Sophie stood beside him, pale cheeks flushed with something fiercer than fear. She wore white, innocent white, though nothing about tonight felt innocent. We had rehearsed this in whispers for 3 nights. No more hiding, no more waiting for permission to exist. The music paused. A hush rippled through the room. Harlan Brooks stepped onto the small dais at the far end. Tall, silver-haired, the same man who'd once carried me on his shoulders when I was 6 and Father was too busy to notice. He raised a glass. To old friends, he said, voice carrying easily. To legacies that endure. And to Reginald Fairfax, whose memory we honor tonight. Applause, polite, scattered. Then Victor stepped forward. He wore crimson velvet, the color of fresh blood. Lady Margaret stood at his elbow, black silk gown gleaming like oil on water. They looked like Victor's already. Victor smiled the same smile he'd worn the night he read the forged will. Confident. Owned. My father's estate, he began, voice smooth as polished marble, has been settled at last. Fairfax Hall, the Yorkshire lands, the trusts, they pass to me as he intended. I will carry his name forward. Honor his wishes. He lifted a folded paper, our copy of the forgery, for show. The crowd murmured approval. A few heads nodded. Society loves a neat story. I felt the locket warm against my skin. Jack gave me the smallest nod. I moved through the sea of gowns and waistcoats. Heads turned. Whispers followed. I didn't look at them. I looked at Victor. When I reached the dais, the room had gone quiet enough to hear the rain tapping the tall windows. Victor's smile froze. Eleanor, he said. Too loud. Too sharp. This is a private gathering. No, I said. My voice carried clear, steady. It's a reckoning. I drew the true will from the hidden pocket in my skirt. The vellum caught the light, old creased reel. The room inhaled. I unfolded it slowly. Let them see the seal, the handwriting, the signatures. I, Reginald Fairfax, I read, bequeath all my worldly goods, estates, and trusts to my beloved daughter Eleanor. Because she is the only one who truly understood my heart, not in wealth but in honesty. Silence stretched thin and sharp. Lady Margaret's face went white. Victor laughed, short, brittle. That's a forgery. She's desperate. She broke into the house. Stole B. Langford stepped from the side doorway. She wore her best black dress, the one she saved for funerals and weddings. Her gray hair was pinned neat. She walked straight to the dais, chin high, unafraid. I witnessed it, she said. Voice clear, unwavering, 5 years ago. In the master study. Sir Reginald signed this document in my presence. And in the presence of Mr. Harlan Sr., who is no longer with us. I held the inkwell steady when his hand shook. A gasp rippled outward. Victor turned to her. You, a servant. You dare, I dare, because I loved him, B said simply, and because truth doesn't care about rank. Sophie moved then. She stepped up beside me. Her hand found mine, squeezed. I won't marry Lord Carrington, she said, loud enough for the room. Mother has tried to force me, to secure alliances, to keep control. But I won't. I choose my sister. I choose what's right. Lady Margaret's mouth opened. No sound came. Victor's face crumpled, not anger now. Something smaller, broken. He looked at me. Really looked. Ellie, he whispered. The old nickname. The one he'd used when we were children, and he'd still shared secrets with me. Don't do this. Don't destroy the family. I was wrong. The gambling, the debts. I let her push me. I let her win. But please, don't ruin us all. The room held its breath. I looked at him. At the brother who'd taken everything. At the man who'd stood silent while they cast me out. Memories flickered, him teaching me to skip stones on the lake. Him laughing when I beat him at cards. Him turning away the night they read the will. I felt the old rage rise. Then settle. Not gone. Just quieter. I folded the will again, tucked it back against my heart. I'm not here to ruin anyone, I said. I'm here to take back what was mine, and to give Sophie the chance to choose her own life. I turned to Harlan Brooks. Sir, I said, will you call for the magistrates? This matter needs settling in law, not gossip. Harlan nodded once, grave, proud. Victor sank onto the edge of the dais, head in his hands. Lady Margaret stared at the floor, silent, diminished. Sophie leaned against me, trembling, but standing. Jack crossed the floor, stopped at my side. His hand brushed mine just once. Warm, steady. The music started again. Slow, morning, beautiful. People began to move. Whispers became conversation. Some left, some stayed, watching. I looked out over the room. Faces I'd known all my life. Faces that had turned away. Not tonight. Tonight they were seeing me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what they saw. Outside, rain still fell. Soft now, washing the streets clean. Inside, something was ending. And something else, something small, fragile, possible, was beginning. The courtroom smelled of polished oak and old paper. Rain streaked the tall windows behind the judge's bench, turning the light gray and soft, like the world outside had decided to weep quietly. I sat straight in the front row. No veil, no gloves, just the same midnight blue gown I'd worn to Harlan Brooks's ball, now altered to feel like armor instead of disguise. Sophie beside me, fingers laced tight with mine. Jack on the other side, quiet present. Bea waited in the gallery, her black dress, neat eyes steady on the judge. The gavel fell once. Twice. The true will was read aloud again, slowly this time, every word measured. Reginald Fairfax's trembling signature. Bea's witness mark, Jack Harlan Sr.'s name etched like a final promise from the grave. The forgery was placed beside it. Side by side, the difference was stark, one alive with hesitation, the other cold and perfect. The judge spoke without flourish. The court finds the document dated 5 years prior to be the authentic last will and testament of Sir Reginald Fairfax. All estates, lands, trusts, and holdings passed to Miss Eleanor Fairfax in full. A murmur rose through the room. Not loud, just the sound of certainty shifting. Victor sat across the aisle, shoulders hunched. Lady Margaret beside him, face blank, as if the words hadn't yet reached her. I didn't look at them, not yet. When the session ended, people filed out. Whispers followed. I stayed seated until the room emptied, except for the 4 of us and the 2 who had once held everything. Victor stood first, slowly, like a man waking from a long fever. He walked toward me, stopped a few feet away. Ellie, he said. Voice cracked. Voice, I don't know what to say. I looked at him then. Really looked. The brother who'd once carried me on his back through the garden when I twisted my ankle. The man who'd stood silent while they read lies in Father's name. You don't have to say anything, I told him. Not now. Lady Margaret rose. Her chin lifted, but the gesture looked tired, hollow. You'll throw us out, she said. Not a question, a statement. No, I said. She blinked. I won't throw you out. But you will leave. Lady Margaret, your guardianship of Sophie ends today. She's of age. She chooses her own path. Sophie's hand tightened in mine. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I turned to Victor. I'm giving you £500, enough to go north somewhere quiet, enough to seek help for the gambling. But only if you write to Sophie every month. Not apologies to me. To her, real letters, honest ones. If you don't, the money stops, and the door closes. Victor stared at the floor. Tears fell onto the polished wood. Silent, unashamed. I felt something loosen inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe never. But the knot of hate that had lived in my chest for so long it loosened, just enough to breathe. Jack stepped closer. His shoulder brushed mine, solid, warm. We left the courtroom together. Rain still falling outside, but softer now, washing the streets clean. Weeks passed like pages turning slowly. Fairfax Hall changed. The east wing once shut away open, rooms aired. Walls repainted soft cream instead of heavy maroon. I kept Father's study as it was his books, his chair, the faint scent of tobacco that lingered like memory. But the rest became something new. Women arrived one by one. Some with bruises hidden under high collars. Some with letters from solicitors that said their homes were no longer theirs. Some simply tired of being invisible. Bea ran the household with quiet efficiency. Sophie greeted each new arrival with tea and a steady gaze that said, "You are safe here." I walked the gardens in the evenings. The roses had come back after the long rain, pink and white, stubborn and sweet. I stood on the balcony one late afternoon, watching the lights slant golden across the lawn. Sophie and Bea were below laughing over a basket of cut flowers. Sophie's hair loose, catching the wind. Bea's hands busy, but her smile easy. Footsteps behind me. Jack. He stopped at the railing. Didn't speak at first. Just stood there close enough that I could feel the warmth of him against the cooling air. "You did it," he said finally. Soft. "We did it." He looked out over the garden. "I keep thinking about my father. How he'd have been proud. Of you. Of this." I turned my face to the breeze. "He'd have been proud of you too. For standing when it mattered." Jack's hand moved. Slow. Hesitant. His fingers brushed mine on the railing. Not taking, just touching, asking. I didn't pull away. We stood like that a long time. The sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched across the grass. "I don't know what this is yet," I said quietly. "Between us, neither do I," he answered. "But I know I want to find out. Slowly, honestly." I smiled. Small, real. His fingers curled around mine. Gentle. Sure. Below, Sophie looked up, saw us, grinned wide and unashamed. Bea glanced too, then turned back to the flowers, hiding a smile of her own. The light faded. Gold to rose to soft lavender. I leaned my head against Jack's shoulder, just for a moment. The house behind us was no longer a place of shadows. It was a beginning. And if you're listening to this story right now, hear this: sometimes the greatest justice isn't making someone pay the highest price. It's standing up, choosing to live differently, and building the family you deserve, not from blood alone, but from kindness and truth. And if you've ever had something taken from you, love home dignity. Don't wait for it to be given back. Take it back by becoming the version of yourself that no one can ever steal from again. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals narration and script development, the emotional tone editing and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.